I'm so excited to kick off a month of special episodes for y'all this summer, all of which are interviews with you listeners from my audience who are currently teaching in the classroom full time. Today's guest is Heather Bonanno, and I'm so excited for you to hear from her. Heather is a chemistry teacher at Chardier's Houston School District. I hope I did not butcher that pronunciation, in Western Pennsylvania. She has been teaching since 2007 and just returned to the classroom this year after taking a 5-year hiatus to be more present with her young children. So she's a really unique perspective because she's talking a lot about her previous experience, but then also just this last year after coming back to the classroom. Heather has experience teaching various levels of chemistry and is passionate about student mastery of content. In this episode, Heather answers all of the questions that you all submitted about teaching chemistry, but our conversation is about so much more than just teaching chemistry. So I really want to encourage everyone to listen to this episode regardless of what you teach. She offers wise advice for new teachers regarding classroom management, a simple hack for incorporating the NGSS, how she simplified grading last school year, and a unique perspective on deadlines and student mastery that I personally found really challenging in a good way. Like, she really thinks about it differently from how I have always thought about it. And I feel stretched in my thoughts around the whole thing. And so I'm just very encouraged from our conversation, and I'm excited for y'all to hear from her. So without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Heather Bonanno. This is Secondary Science Simplified, a podcast for secondary science teachers who want to engage their students and simplify their lives. I'm Rebecca Joyner from It's Not Rocket Science. As a high school science teacher turned curriculum writer, I am passionate about helping other science teachers love their jobs, serve their students, and do it all in only 40 hours a week. Are you ready to rock the time you spend in your classroom and actually have a life outside of it? You are in the right place, teacher friend. Let's get to today's episode. Hey, Heather, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so excited to talk to you and just grateful that you're able to sneak away during your prep time to do this conversation with me.
Yeah, it's our last full student day. And so we're winding down for the year.
The end is in sight. Yeah. For everyone listening, I know this is airing in July. We're recording this the last week of May, and we are just trudging through 3 more days here with my kids. So we're ready to be done.
It's so hard after Memorial Day.
It's so hard. It's so hard. Well, let's just dive into this. I'm super excited to talk to you. I think one of the things that really interests me in talking to you is that you've always taught chemistry. So tell listeners, why do you always teach chemistry? Is that just the luck of the draw, or do you just love teaching chemistry?
Well, I don't know how it works in every other state, but I'm in Pennsylvania, and our science teachers are certified by content area. So you have to take your state test for any area of science that you would want to teach. And I only want to teach chemistry. So that's all I'm certified in. So I can't teach anything else. Even if they wanted me to, I would have to take the test.
Okay, so that's so funny because when I was in graduate school, one of my professors kept trying to get me. I only needed like 1 or 2 extra courses, then I could take our praxis for an add-on middle school. And I was like, but I literally don't want anyone to be able to make me teach middle school. So I refused to do it. And then I still ended up at a private school, and I had like 3 sections of 8th grade science because they didn't care that I wasn't certified. I was like, dang it. Because I'm with you. I love that you're like, I just want to be certified in what I want to teach.
Yep. I don't want to teach. I could probably be okay with teaching physics, but it's hard to find. Like, most of the time, if you're physics, you're also math is what I've found.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't want to teach math either.
Yeah, absolutely not. Okay, so I have so many questions for you, so we're just going to dive right into them. And about half are ones that I'm like just going to word for word tell you were just ones that teachers submitted that they're like, please ask a chemistry teacher this question. So you're our lucky chemistry teacher representative. So one of those is that like chemistry is just a hard topic in general, and it always is kind of interesting to me that it is, you know, one of the required sciences in almost every state, I believe. So how do you manage student apathy, or maybe like students coming into your class with a mindset of defeatism, like before you even get started? You know, how do you manage that?
Yeah, you're definitely going to have that. And I think it's going to happen in different ways every single year. And I found the best thing is you just have to remind your students that, yeah, they're in a chemistry class, but they're not here just to learn chemistry. They're here to learn critical thinking, problem solving, how to interpret data. And they're forming these pathways in their brains that are later going to be replaced with things that they actually care about. But if they don't set that pathway between those neurons in their brain, then later when they get to a subject or their career that they actually need those pathways, they aren't going to be there and they're going to have a much harder time. So that's kind of my overall first week. I'm trying to push like, yes, this is a chemistry class, but it's really critical thinking, problem solving, interpreting data. And when that doesn't work, it's kind of a literal, here's your pencil, pick it
Yeah.
up, write this down. And, you just kind of make them go through these prescribed ways of solving
hmm
the problem. And it's like, even if you don't understand it right now, you can do the steps.
hmm
And the more you do it, the more you'll understand it.
Absolutely. That is literally how I start off my first set of lecture notes in chemistry is like, this is a problem solving course. You are going to learn how to problem solve. And that is a life skill. Like, I'm so glad you said that. But when it comes to the content, because like I 100% agree with you, chemistry is still like a hard concept to make relevant. Like, I feel like biology, there's so many things that like relate to them personally. Do you have any ways that you try to make the content relevant besides just the fact that like the skills that they're walking through and that way of thinking will be helpful?
I just try and pull in as many resources as I can, like facial and hair products and like nutrition labels. What does a calorie actually mean when you're looking at that? And just anything. They really enjoyed doing the drug research project from your curriculum this year. That was a big favorite. They thought it was very cool to like dive into all of that.
I literally put that in for like the biology students, like that are like, I need something like, and I was like, okay, this is biochem. Like, here you go.
Yeah. And it's funny because I feel like you have these kids who are very much like, I really loved bio, take me back to bio.
hmm
And then you have these kids who were like me, like, I want nothing to do with bio, really. Feel like chemistry is where it's at for me. But when you tie it together like that, you can see those connections that you're making.
I love that. Okay, so you're trudging through, you're teaching the things, you're teaching the skills, the content, you're making it as relevant as you can. But what do you do in your chemistry course when you do hit those roadblocks where it's like, okay, they're not getting it, or this is just too hard? Like, what's kind of your perspective on, I'm just going to keep pushing through and they will follow, they will come alongside me eventually? Or do you stop and remediate? Like, how do you balance knowing? Because I think especially for new teachers and maybe teachers new to teaching chemistry, it's hard to know what is like, oh, this is just hard. So there's a natural like resistance versus like, oh, they like really are lost and I need to stop and reteach.
Yeah, they get that look on their face for sure, like deer in the headlight. Or if you're doing the prime times and they are all sitting there and trying to talk to each other because they don't know what they're doing, then it's really truly like a step back. Okay, guys, we are going to start this fresh again. I feel like somewhere along the way you missed something. And it's okay as the teacher to say, maybe I didn't present this correctly, or
hmm
maybe I didn't phrase it in a way that they could understand. Like, it doesn't mean that you didn't do a good job teaching it.
hmm
It just means that you have to start over. And then I usually work like one step at a time. And after step one, it's like, okay, does everybody understand why we did step one this way? And then, I give them that opportunity to ask questions. Then we go step two. Okay, we've done step two. Are we good now? Ask a neighbor, why did we just do that step? And get them talking about it. And usually you can pinpoint like where things went wrong.
hmm
Then it's okay, well, now that we've fixed that and worked together, I want you to try this one
hmm
and see if they have a better feel for it. Now, some of them aren't, but that's, I think, where you can feel comfortable in knowing that, like, I'm going to keep going and they're going to catch up.
hmm I love that you mentioned prime times because obviously I'm obsessed with them. And I just think it's such a great diagnostic metric of like a daily check-in, like you said, of are we getting this? Are we not? Are we crying? Are we like trying to cheat during the prime time? Because that's usually like a sign of there's a lot of like searching eyeballs and fluttering papers. It's like, Okay, we're all stressed out right now.
Panic
Yeah,
ensues. Yes.
this is a panicked prime time. We need to slow down.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know you're in Pennsylvania and y'all use steels, which from my reading of it, it seems like it's almost identical to NGSS. But as a Pennsylvania teacher, do y'all say you use NGSS or you just say we use steels?
We say we use steels.
Okay.
It's pretty much the same. I think it ties in more tech ed standards are kind of all under that umbrella. And I think that is the main difference from my understanding, but it's still the assessment and the phenomenon based learning.
Right. Okay, good. That's what I thought, but I had to hear it from your mouth first. So I would love to hear, how do you then balance, like, we just said sometimes you realize you have to slow down, but like I think there is kind of a disconnect between all of the content that most chemistry teachers want to teach and the ability to cover all of that while still doing all the NGSS, like the 3D nature and all the skills and stuff like that. Especially I see in the teacher Facebook groups. But this was a teacher submitted question, but I'm seeing it in the Facebook groups all the time, like the chemistry teacher groups of people being like, I feel like I'm not getting them prepared for college chemistry if I don't get through solutions and thermo and acids and bases, but it's hard to do that and do all these skills. So how are you balancing all of the content of a traditional chemistry with really making things NGS-esque or Steels-esque?
It's really, really difficult. It is really difficult to get through all of the content, especially the current school that I'm at and where we are. I don't have any lab periods. So I have 40 minutes, 5 days a week.
40 minutes is so insane.
Yeah, it's super, super short periods.
God bless you still
And
doing a prime time in a 40-minute class period.
well, it's tough. I had to skip a lot of days, especially toward the end of the year. I was just kind of like, we are running out of time. And I ended the year without covering some very important topics, but
Yeah.
the topics that I covered, they know really well.
Mhm.
And so I feel good about that. But yeah, it's really hard to balance all of that. And we've kind of found the easiest hack to do is the labs that you normally do at the end of learning, push them to the front of learning. And those are now your phenomenons.
Mm. That is such a good hack. It's so simple and it's such an easy way to explore, like you said, before you explain.
Yeah. And so you're still doing the same labs. They're still getting to see that content. It's just being approached from more of an inquiry.
Mm.
Why did you think that happened? Rather than, okay, we learned it. Now we're going to see it.
Well, and I love that too, because sometimes I think I get frustrated with students during on lab day when they're so obsessed with getting the right answer. And I'm like, it's literally not about that. It's about you like understanding and experiencing. So almost when you do that, it forces them to be like, you will not get the right answer because you don't even know what we're doing yet. So
You don't
you're
even know what
just,
you're supposed to get.
yeah, it's just about like you thinking and like wondering and guessing. So I love that you mentioned that. That's a really simple and actionable hack. I agree with you too on I don't even know if I should say this out loud, but I'm always telling people when I get all these emails in the spring that are like, we're only through unit 5. What should we do? And I'm like, hey, if I was you, I would just try to get through in chemistry through stoichiometry. And then
Yep.
if you have time for one of the others, like choose what you care most about of 7, 8, 9, 10. But like, as long as I feel like they've seen Stoic once before they take Chem 101 in college, it won't be the end of the world. But I just hate rushing.
Yeah. And they have to have a firm foundation or they are going to be super confused when you get to all of that other stuff anyway.
That's so true. It's not going to make any sense if they're like, yeah, that's so true. Okay. Any other NGSS hacks you would like to share? Because that was such a good one.
Actually, there is one thing I know. So this happened in the summer before I started. I'm new to the district this year, but I know when the teachers in the department were trying to make sense of all the standards and all the anchors, they used those big white poster board post-it pages and put one anchor on each. And then if you did something in your class to touch on that anchor or standard, they had you use a post-it note to just say, I do this in this unit. And so that was a really good way for them to figure out if there were any gaps in anything that wasn't being covered and who could fit it in and where into their curriculum. So when I was hired as a new teacher, they sent me this Excel sheet and it was like, okay, chemistry, this is what you for sure have to cover. And that was a really helpful document to have.
I love that. So you said they did that as a school or that was or like a school department or that was a district thing?
The science department did that.
I love that. That is so great.
They were in a curriculum cycle this past summer. And so that was one of the things that they did just to try to make sure that all the curriculum across all of those standards was actually being hit.
That's awesome. Because in Pennsylvania, what is the traditional course sequence that students are taking in science?
It's usually bio, chem, physics, and then some elective capstone class, like an AP level.
All right, that's helpful. Okay, so of all of the concepts in chemistry, is there one that you feel like you teach really well or that seems to always go over well with your students, or you do in a unique way that you could share about?
I don't think I teach anything very uniquely. I feel like chemistry is pretty straightforward, but I found that my students always had a really hard time understanding molecule polarity because they haven't had physics yet. And so they don't really understand how all of the forces balance out. And so I always used model kits in the past. And if something was had the basic tetrahedral shape, I would try to have them imagine that they were pulling on the bonds. And I would say if the molecule moves, it's polar. If it stays still, it's nonpolar. But still without understanding forces and vectors and all of that. So I saw something online and I cannot remember the source of this, but it is not of my own creation. But I got keychains, like the little keychains, and attached rubber bands to them, or rubber bands so that they could pull them in different directions, in different strengths. And they could see, okay, the keychain moves. So that means those forces are not equal and opposite. And that
Mm,
seemed to really help them be able to visualize polar and nonpolar molecules.
I love that. So it's just like a keychain ring with something hanging off of it, and then you put rubber bands around the ring of it, and you're seeing if what's hanging off is moving?
No, just like the round keychain, ring keychain, and
Okay.
then like 4 rubber bands. So if there were lone pairs, you could imagine that 2 of them were lone pairs and 2 of them were bonds. And then when you pull those 2 bonds, the ring physically moves in that direction.
I love that. That's a great visual. I wish I was recording the video of this as people could see your hands because I'm
Yeah,
understanding what you're saying, but
they could probably find something similar. Yeah, if you Google like keychains and rubber bands for molecule polarity,
okay.
they should be able to find my original source.
I love that. Okay, I wanna make sure I ask every teacher who ever comes on this podcast because I feel like I have to ask you a couple of things just from pain points that people have. One of those is classroom management. Do you have, like, a hack or a technique that you love that you feel like is effective with classroom management?
I don't have a hack. I don't have a hack, and classroom management has always been one of those things for me. Like, it's just hard sometimes. It
Mhm.
is just something that's hard. And so you have to just set up those expectations and procedures early in the year and really be a stickler with them. And then I find I can usually loosen up a little bit and the kids know like when to rein it back in. But one thing when I saw this question that you asked, one thing that I will say to like incoming new teachers is that it gets easier with age because I
Mhm.
think as a new high school teacher, you are only 5 or 6 years older than the kids that you are expected to discipline. And I remember as a new teacher feeling so awkward calling parents to discuss discipline when they could be my parents.
I know.
Like I'm only a couple years older than these
Mhm.
high school kids I'm teaching. And I wish I if I could go back and tell my new teacher self, it would be don't be afraid to ask for help. If you're having a discipline problem and you're uncomfortable handling it yourself, ask a teacher that's a veteran teacher in your department or ask administration. And nobody is going to think that you're failing or you don't know how to handle a classroom because it's not something that you can practice until you are in the classroom.
That's so true. Like, even if you do go through a traditional certification program and you have your, like, mentor teacher, it's still not your class fully, and there's still another adult there. It's so different. You're so right. You're never really gonna get your practice until you're in there just thrown in with the wolves.
Yeah, exactly. It is being thrown to the wolves for sure.
That's great encouragement, though, because I do think, like I remember just being so concerned that people would think I didn't know what I was doing when I, like, didn't know what I was doing. So, like, why didn't I just humble myself and be like, "I need help. Like, I don't know what I'm doing," you know?
It's like when you're a new parent and they just send you home with this new
Oh my
baby. You're
gosh.
like, "What am I supposed to do with this child?" That's how I feel like it is with a classroom.
It's so true. I talk about all the time because we adopted my oldest and literally we were handed him we gave them our car seat. They returned it with a baby and he had a Post-it note stuck to him that said, get his Billy checked. And I didn't know what Billy was. It was short for Billy Reuben. He was a little
Yeah.
jaundiced. I didn't know. And then we drove 4 hours home and I'm just like Googling, like, when do I feed the baby? What's Billy? Like, I knew nothing. But then it's like within 72 hours, you're like an expert because you just are like submerged. Like, it's like immersion therapy. It's great. That's really I know you said you didn't have a hack, but that's just good wisdom right there for classroom management. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, let's talk about labs. Any lab day execution tips? Any lab recs in general? Like, I think a lot of teachers, like, that is the biggest burden they feel on them is just lab days feel so hard. I don't have the energy. I don't have the time. I do all this prep and then the kids don't even understand it. So do you have any wisdom or advice for lab days?
Bins. Bins, bins, bins. The more organized and upfront that I can be going into the lab, the more success they usually have. So I know a lot of teachers, it's up to the kids that as they see something that they need, they go get it out of the cabinet. And I found that just adds chaos because usually, like, all your graduated cylinders are in one spot. So when kids need a 50 milliliter graduated cylinder, I pull those out and they're in a bin. So everything is just ready to go at their fingertips. And it streamlines a lot of the time that it takes them to find what they need. Or 100 kids are asking you, where are the graduated cylinders again? Even though it's probably labeled on the outside of your cabinet.
So you come in the morning of and you make your bins for each lab group essentially.
Yes.
I love that. What do you do if you have like 3 sections of chemistry on the same day? Do you have like a gajillion bins or you just how do you flip them between classes?
Well, right now, I'm actually only teaching one prep of chemistry several times a day. So I don't really run into that right now. But yeah, I just have bins everywhere. Like, this is for this level of chem. This is for this level of chem.
Perfect.
Return it when you're done. If any chemicals need refilled from the little vials, let me know so I can replenish. And then you just have to be really on top of them for the cleanup. I don't mind setting it up, but if they don't clean it up, then that's a big problem.
Mhm. What do you do with your 40-minute class periods for labs? How do you manage getting labs even done?
Oh gosh.
I'm putting you on the spot so you can think for a second.
Honestly, like, it was very, very rough this year. I've just had to really, like, kind of go over the pre-lab the day before, and then they just come in and have to get started on it during that class period. And I also have a visual timer clock in my classroom. I know some people can project those, but I have the one that's actually hanging on the wall and I pull it back. So it's a good visual of how time is ticking down. And they're always shocked when they look at it like, oh my gosh, we only have 10 more minutes.
That's a great idea. I have one of those for my kids.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great idea for the classroom. Okay, this is a specific question about labs that a teacher submitted, and I see some sort of derivation of this all the time. I feel like there's a lot of concern that chemistry teachers have about they're not doing enough wet labs, quote unquote, or they feel like they might be doing too much kitchen chemistry and they need to do more like hardcore chemistry. Do you have to do that? What are your thoughts on that? How do you balance that?
Well, I'm for sure in favor of students being able to be exposed to all of the lab equipment as much as possible. But I don't think that means you need to use hazardous chemicals. If you can do a lab with vinegar and baking soda and salt and sugar, then my gosh, make it easy on yourself and use those
And the
kitchen things
cleanup, it's so much easier.
down the drain,
Yes.
nothing to worry about because the hazardous waste is really a problem. I mean, you have to figure out how, like, do I have to precipitate this out before I put it down the drain? Do I have to filter it? And that's on you, the teacher, not necessarily on them. You've got this big waste beaker of stuff that you have to deal with, and nobody has a ton of free minutes to just deal with all of that waste.
Yeah, it's so
So
true.
I think the cleaner the lab you can do, the better. They're going to learn the same thing. And especially if they're using the lab equipment, I think that's the biggest thing.
I love that. Okay, any tips for how you just keep your students engaged? I mean, your periods are so short. It's not like you have a 90-minute period. You're going to have to keep them from falling asleep. You're probably just like sprinting for 40 minutes. But any tips you have just to keep them with you and not just like zoning out or talking about homecoming or whatever.
It's hard. They're teenagers. They're
Yeah.
always going to talk about homecoming. But I think the popsicle sticks are good.
hmm
They're never going to know when they're going to get called on or asked to do something. And then I always, if I can, I like to get them up and out of their seats, whether that's with stations, whether that's using like a question trail, or even just if I have the answers posted somewhere on the other side of the room and we're doing practice problems. And it's okay, when you get these 5 done, stand up and go check your work. Because they're so tired of sitting all day in all of their classes. So if we can get them up and moving, then they're much happier to know that, oh, once I get these 5 done, I get to stand up.
Truly. I mean, I was always about like getting them moving, but I don't think it really hit me until I had children. I have 2 boys. Like, they literally have to be in constant motion at all times. And so I'm like, I can't imagine. I mean, and I think even like big high school boys need that. Like, all of the kids need just to move their bodies.
As long as we aren't in lab, I allow them to eat snacks if they're hungry because you know how kids can get when they're hungry.
Hangry.
They can't focus on anything. So if they just have some little pretzels or
Mhm.
something, as long as they clean up after themselves, I think it's totally fine if they have a little snack while they're doing their chemistry work.
That's so generous of you. Okay, I love that. Okay. What about differentiation tips? Like, how are you reaching all the different people in your classes?
Well, I think you just have to keep in mind the end game. Like I said from the beginning, like what is the real goal here? Is it for them to become world class Nobel Prize chemists, or is it for them to be able to think critically,
Mm,
follow a formula to solve a problem, to learn to speak English?
mm,
So if I have an English learner, I'm maybe just going to do tests on vocabulary, or can you interpret this question? Can you understand what this question is asking in English that's written for you? Their goal is to learn English through chemistry.
mhm,
For my kids with IEPs and 504s, it's the same thing. Like, I'm not necessarily concerned that they can solve a stoichiometry problem without the mole bridge on their quiz. I'm fine with like giving them that little extra nudge of like, hey, remember these steps that we did? Just can you show me that you can follow the steps?
mhm. It's so true. Even like in my earlier days teaching, just coming out of high school, my high school experience and stuff like where you were like memorizing all the things. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, give them every reference table. Who
Yeah, give
cares?
them all the references. I
Because
don't
they have
care.
everything anyway, just as long as they can use them.
The kids who are going on to AP and higher levels of chem, they're going to learn the polyatomic ion. They're they're just going to know them. They are going to know the charges of their ions.
I still have like half the periodic tables, molar masses memorized just from AP Chem doing so many practice problems. You just start
Yeah,
memorizing them.
it's so funny. They ask me all the time. They're like, "How did you know that molar mass?" And I'm like, "It's just in there. You look it up so many times."
There are so many things. I wish I could decide, like, I don't need to remember that nitrogen is like 14.07 or,
I need to remember where I put my cell phone down last.
yeah, literally. Okay. I really am excited to hear this from you because you mentioned in your application you have experience like switching schools and switching districts. And I think this is something that can feel so hard and scary for teachers, but it can like make or break whether or not you stay in this career, like who your admin is, where you're teaching, what that's like. So, would you tell us about your experience with that?
Yes. So I started teaching right out of college, and I had a few long-term subbing positions, and so that got me into some different districts, and then I got offered a contract at a school that was in the headlines for all the right reasons, like top in the state, great reputation for academic achievement and sports and all the things. And looking on paper, it's like, oh my gosh, this is my dream job. I can't believe I got hired here. Well, that all comes with a price of like pressure on the teachers and from the parents. And I did not thrive in that environment. I know many teachers who did. So I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but it was not my thing.
Mhm.
So after we had our first daughter, I think I was really looking for a way to get out of that school. which, like you said, is a very difficult thought because teachers often, you're getting these steps for your salary. And you don't know that those steps are going to be honored by another school district. And it's like, oh man, I put all that time in. I hate to start over at zero. But my husband and I, we decided we were going to move like halfway across the state to try to be closer to family. And we just kind of put all our eggs in a basket and up and moved across the state. But unfortunately, like 6 months later, we were kind of realizing that wasn't really where we wanted to be. Life is busy. We weren't seeing our family that much more often anyway. And so we actually moved back. Our house hadn't sold yet. So we just took it off the
Wow.
market, came back, and this is home. So while we had moved, I was in a district that was very different. It was much more urban. The kids had way bigger problems than just achieving A's.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was homelessness, there was, I think, 100% free and reduced lunch. So the kids were definitely treated more like kids first. And I loved the school that I was at. It just, the area and the whole thing, it didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
So when we moved back, I got another long-term subbing position at a very high achieving school. And after that long-term subbing position was done, I was a little bit like, I have had it. I am done. I am not teaching anymore. Like, this is not for me. And so I spent the next 5 years actually working at the daycare where my daughter went.
Wow.
And it was great. I had flexibility. If she woke up puking at 5 a.m., it was just, okay, I can't come in today. And it was no problem. So it was exactly what I needed when I needed it. And then another thing I swore I'd never do was work in the district where I live. But fast forward, I was at my daughter's field day, and one of the elementary teachers was like, hey, there's a chemistry position open at the high school next year. And I think it's like made for you. And I was kind of like, I have to apply for it because I knew the admin there was great, very supportive. I'd be on the same schedule as my kids. So I applied, got hired. And so this is my first year back in this district. And I think admin, they set the culture of the school. And that sets, I think, how your day is going to go, how your school year is going to go, and ultimately how your career is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I think your administration really has to suit what you are looking for in a career.
Mm-hmm.
I am very much like small town, kids are kids first, and they need to treat you as a professional and have high expectations, but then give you the resources to live up to that expectation.
And trust that you, like you said, are a professional and you can make the decisions that are best for the students.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of times teachers are treated almost like factory workers. Like our job is to push out product, and that product is kids who get A's. Whereas like success doesn't always look like an A for all kids.
Mm-hmm. I know. I feel like the older I get, the more I'm like, why is not every class just pass fail? You know?
A good administrator really realizes and embraces that.
Yeah, they have to. I get that it's so hard for them to ride the balance of like the data they need to prove to their superior that they're doing their job. But like you said, it's just such a game changer when they actually ride that balance well of actually doing whatever they have to do for their superior, but really seeing teachers and seeing students first. And you feel like your current district does that, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And when I was in my interviews for my current job, I told them straight out, I said, I just need you to know that taking this job, I am now a mom first and a teacher second. And for so long in my career at these other schools, it was like chemistry. Being a chemistry teacher was like really what defined me.
Mm.
And then, stepping back and having my kids, it really made me think like, okay, this is a career and it's an important career, but it's not got to be my whole entire life.
Yes, it's just your job. It's not your life.
Yeah.
Preach. I couldn't agree with you more. And so speaking of like the kids first and seeing kids first, because I absolutely love that. I think that has led you to have a really unique perspective on deadlines and student mastery and getting students to take ownership of their own learning and understanding, which is very hard to get them to do. So I would love for you to share how you do that because that's something a lot of people struggle with. And I think you have a unique perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, teenagers today, they have so much on their plates. They have jobs, extracurricular activities, like they are babysitting younger siblings. And my chemistry class is most certainly not the center of their world. As much as I like to think it is, it's sure it's definitely not. And I think that as long as my students are able to communicate with me what they need in terms of learning the material, I'm going to listen and I'm going to be flexible. Because if they all have a math test on another day or an English assignment that's due, and they say, hey, Mrs. B, we really can't take this quiz. We have all this other stuff due. Okay, great. I'm going to move mine. I don't care when we take the quiz. As long as you feel confident going into the quiz that you're going to do well, then that's what I want to see. Or if they take a quiz and they come in, before the quiz and say, hey, I was up late last night for whatever reason. I really didn't get to study or finish this lab. Well, okay, let me see what you've done, or let's take the quiz today. And if you bomb it, we'll retake it. Like everybody learns at a different pace. And especially seeing my own child in elementary school, it's really gotten me to think about deadlines. And while deadlines are definitely important, so is advocating for yourself and saying, hey, I think if I just had another day or a day or two, I could really significantly improve the product that I'm going to give to you. And that's what I want to see. Like, I want to see that they've learned it. Does that have to be on my own timeline? I don't think so. Not necessarily.
Well, and I love that idea of that being a life skill of like you're training them to be able to talk to an adult, to talk to a superior and communicate that clearly and respectfully. Like I think that's something that will translate in every aspect of their life.
Yeah. Like in the future, it's deadlines at a job, it's a bill that's due that maybe you can't pay the whole thing right up front, but you call the company and say, hey, I wasn't expecting this $300 medical bill, but right now I can pay you 100. And they're going to say, okay, pay us the 100 and then you can pay us the rest next month or whatever. Like they have to be able to do that.
Something I never thought I would spend so much of my adult life doing, like on the phone with insurance agents or whoever, like
Yeah.
customer service reps. Like
Yeah.
no one taught me how to do this. So I really think that's an interesting perspective and that you challenged me on that because I'm a psycho about deadlines. And so I really appreciate your different opinion about that. I think that's really wise.
Tricky too, because you do have to watch out for those kids who try to abuse the system. But
Yeah.
I've not really come across much of that. If a kid comes in and they're like, hey, I'm really not ready for this quiz, but I can look back and say, well, you've also not participated in class. You've not done the homework.
Mm,
So I'm sorry, but you haven't shown me that you're putting forth effort leading up to it. You're going to take it today
yeah.
anyway. They usually meet that with a, "Ooh, I got caught," kind of a thing.
I love that. I definitely know my greatest like weakness as an educator was always I'm just so black and white and I have a hard time with those gray situations. So I really just like appreciate hearing from people like you because you sound like you navigate that really well with like grace, but also like you said, you can show them the data of like, okay, let's think back of how you've been in class the last week and
Yeah,
go from there.
yeah.
Okay, well, the last question I want to ask you, which I ask every guest I have, is what is one way that you have simplified your life recently? And it could be school related or not.
Well, there is something that our administration has encouraged us to do in the second half of the year, which kind of ties back into student mastery, which is to use rubric for as much as you possibly can. And when I tell you that that has changed the grading game for me,
Tell me more.
so I used to, like, for example, with limiting reactants, there are so many steps that the students have to do to figure out the answer. And I used to feel like I had to give every step along the way a certain point value so that, like, if they missed a certain step, I knew exactly how much I was taking off. And grading took me forever.
Mm.
And this year, I made a rubric. And the idea is that you share the rubric with the students ahead of time. Now, I will be better at that next year. but you share it with them ahead of time so that they know exactly the expectations. So the objectives that are listed, you kind of break those down into what specific skills do you need. So for like limiting reactants, my skills on my rubric were things like, can you correctly identify the starting and ending things that you're solving for? Did you correctly add up all the molar masses? Did you perform your stoichiometry in a way that was organized, showing labels all along the way? Did your final answer contain a reasonable number of significant digits and units? And it was so easy to just grade based off of that rubric rather than like nitpicking every single thing. And then, you have the kids who are like, well, why did I miss this half a point right here? And it totally eliminates all that because you're truly grading them off the rubric for the mastery of that skill.
I love that. And I'm sure, like you said, it's so much prep on the front end to be making those. But once you do it once, now you can just recycle these over and over again.
Yeah, honestly, it's not that bad because I use AI to make the rubric.
Oh, yeah. So I keep forgetting that we have robots doing things for us like this. Okay, that's genius. So are you making a rubric for would that be like a rubric for like one FRQ on a test? Or is that just a rubric for like a general skill? Like what is or is it for the whole test? Like how are you doing that?
Well, I haven't figured out how to do a rubric like that for the entire unit. I more or less have been using them for the quizzes leading up to the unit test.
Love that.
And so it streamlines those skills like leading up to the unit test.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, keep us posted if you figure out how to keep expanding on your rubric use, because I think that's really, really wise and definitely a way to simplify.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm just so grateful to talk to you, and I can't wait for people to hear from you.
Thank you for having me. This was great talking with you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode and my interview with Heather. You can find any links mentioned in the show notes at itsnotrocketscienceclassroom.com/episode 190. Heather does use my chemistry curriculum, and my prime times that go with that. So I'll link those in the show notes since I know she referenced those. And if you are listening and you teach chemistry, leave a review for the podcast. I would love to hear from you. All right, teacher friends, that wraps up today's episode. If you're looking for an easy way to start simplifying your life as a secondary science teacher, head to itsnotrocketscienceclassroom.com/challenge to grab your classroom reset challenge. And guess what? It's totally free. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you here next week. Until then, I'll be rooting for you, teacher friend.